So our next speaker is Sarah Urbick, and Sarah is actually faculty at Cabrillo College, but she also is, I believe, uh, at a construction company that you work there as well,
Yep,
Sarah.
that is
Could you tell us a
correct.
little bit more? There she is. Welcome.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Um, so I hate my picture, so I'm going to share my screen. Give me just 2 seconds to get this organized and get this displayed because I am working remotely, which is one of the big perks of my job in my life. So start the slideshow.
And what class do you teach, Sarah, at Cabrillo?
I teach surveying, so
Okay.
engineering 1A.
Okay, great. So if they want to, surveying is for all types of engineers or just for the ones thinking of civil?
It's geared towards civil for
Okay.
sure, but there is absolutely nothing stopping anyone from taking the class out of curiosity and out of interest. So two
And
more shakes of a lamb's tail.
do
Yeah,
you teach that every semester or is it specific to like fall or spring?
it is strictly fall.
Okay,
So it is
great.
only the fall semester that we do this. So let me start my share screen. All right, we're going to share screen two. And I talk to myself and everybody a lot. Okay, you guys ready?
Yes.
All right. So, Pretty, thank you for having me. There were some questions that you sent out. So I wanted to kind of start off by going through some of those. And that's going to give you a basic introduction as to who I am, where I came from, what I'm doing now. And then we can open it up to conversation, questions, anything you're curious about. I tend to be a little too honest sometimes, so I will try and run it through my corrective filter before it actually comes out. So if you don't mind. All right. So one of the first questions was, where did I grow up? Actually, I was born at Dominican Hospital. So, yep, born right there. I don't know if you can see that. Can you see my mouse?
Yes.
Okay. So born at Dominican Hospital, grew up in SoCal right up here. It's kind of hiding. And then, of course, when I was 16, then we moved to Capitola, nice flat ground out of the hills. I can legitimately say that I had to walk uphill both ways to get to high school. So I had to come down the hill this way, cross SoCal Creek, and go back up to SoCal High. So that was lots of fun. I'm going to back up just a second. This cover photo is an excavator. It's a 345 excavator. It's kind of a upper to mid-size excavator. And what I have below there, so we're digging out the dirt and we're putting it in a bottom dump truck. We had two of these trailers hooked together next to not a pickup, but a tractor. And what we were doing was we were excavating overburden so we could get down to the rock below so we could make aggregate base. So we had to strip off all this material. And in order to cut the slot that we were in, you guys have all seen the trucks driving down the highway. You've driven right by them. So you know how tall those are. This is all you can see from standing next to it. It's just the very top of the trailer. We were moving 11,000 yards of dirt per day. So we had a lot of those trucks and we were getting it done. This was with Granite Construction, nice wide open area, but that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that particular job. So that was all right. Went to SoCal High. This is a new photo. It did not look like this when I went there. But so the thing was, I went into engineering because I had two uncles who were engineers. One was electrical and one was electrical and civil. There we go. And they had comfortable lifestyles. And I liked the looks of that a lot. And you're not going to make that kind of money as a math teacher, even though it's something you really enjoy, something you really like to do. Turns out I don't like kids all that much. So, young children, I should say. So I worked at a preschool while I was in high school and babysat for some of the kids that were there. One parent was a geotechnical engineer, soils, earth movements, that sort of thing, seismic engineering. So he saw me studying calculus as I was babysitting his kids one time and asked, "What do you want to be?" I said, "I'm thinking about being an engineer." So he invited me to come and work for him. So I worked for Stephen Rass and Associates in Watsonville. And what we did was soil analysis. Now, this is going to kind of age me a little bit, but the Loma Prieta earthquake,
Mhm.
that massive earthquake in 1989, I was in high school at the time. And basically, downtown Santa Cruz fell down. It crumbled and collapsed. So the image there on the lower right-hand side is of Pacific Avenue, buildings that just disappeared. Um, Downtown Santa Cruz was built on sand. And if you've ever built a sand castle, you know that when the water comes in, it just kind of melts. Well, that's what happened. If you start shaking it, then the water settles out and there it goes. Your building's going to fall. You don't have a stable base. The upper left-hand picture there is just a generic soils lab. It's not actually the lab that I worked in, but you do an analysis, a sieve analysis to figure out the gradations. What size rocks do I have in what proportions? Does that mean it's suitable material to build on? So we would run the tests and the experiments to find that out. So that comes in really handy when you start taking materials. So I was having, practical experience and the educational side of things at the same time while I was going to Cabrillo. Um, Speaking of Cabrillo, it's the reason I came back was because I had such fond memories of my time there. I loved it so much that I turned a 2-year associate's degree into a 5-year learning experience. Um, I I absolutely failed calculus 5C. I struggled with graphics. Don't ask me to do anything with pencil widths, right? And making sure that that's it. This was all hand drafting. We didn't even have whiteboards in the classrooms. We had chalk and there was dust everywhere and you had to do all your drafting by hand.
Mhm.
So I was a repeat offender for those two. So that was excusable. I had to take a little bit of extra time for that. At one point, I was going to quit engineering and become a chef. And I heard Lainey say, it's going to be tough. And she's absolutely right. You will struggle. It's going to be a challenge for this is really what I want to do with my life. I was going to quit engineering and become an astrophysicist. And that didn't happen either. And my best friends, I made friends in physics class, being the smart aleck that I am, and they became my future roommates. We all transferred to University of the Pacific together in Stockton. Um, we were we were all kind of just a little bit older, just a few years ahead of the typical just out of high school Cabrillo students, back in the day. Um, Although we were older, we were not much wiser. We kind of had our goals though. We knew that we needed to get through UOP as fast as possible because it was expensive. It
Mhm.
was pricey. So what I can tell you there is if there is any opportunity for scholarships, financial aid, look into it. Submit the essay, put something together, and you're going to have a bank of those. Here, I need to tailor this to this particular scholarship application, but have the outlines, have those ready to go. That's a huge thing. Um, at one point, there was a scholarship available, $2,500 per year. Okay, that was a lot back then. And it turns out only two people applied. It was myself and my boyfriend at the time, and so he spent the next 5 years being bitter that I beat him out for it. But, you know, hey, I had the better essay. So yeah, you kind of do need that English class. I thought I'd go into engineering and I'd never have to take English again. I was wrong, but it's okay. It's all right. Um, so I took drafting twice, took surveying. I liked surveying, had a good time with that. I liked being outside. I liked being in the environment. Materials, calculus, physics, all of the basics, all of the prerequisites to transfer. Plus, some computer science and some logic classes, some English classes, a little bit of everything. Introduction to art appreciation. You can tell I was on the verge of dropping out. So uh, we, we ended up at University of the Pacific, like I said. Uh, And this image is a concrete canoe. So I don't know if you guys have heard about the ASCE, the student competitions. Well, at this year, this photo was taken at Lodi Lake. That was in 1999. And we were the host, University of the Pacific. So this was a Cabrillo alumni, and that was a Cabrillo alumni, and that was me looking very, very young. Um, I will say that, oops, jumped ahead a little bit. Um, there are the reasons that these knees are all bent is because we were holding the boat up. It was deciding not to float anymore. And the reason that we had the life jackets right there over the title on the boat was because it was cracked. So our design failed while we were hosting the show. So that was a little bit of a challenge. These were photos we took while building the boat before we had gotten to the concrete. We laid down, this is Paul Schneider. He did a lot of the design on the canoe. He did a lot of the research behind it. Dan Jabor was a Cabrillo alumni, grew up in Watsonville. He is now a civil engineer for HDR. Paul is a president and principal engineer for Siegfried and Associates. This is Ryan. He, unfortunately, he would sit in front of me in class at Cabrillo, and his head was much larger than my field of vision. So that was always a little bit of a challenge. But the five of us were always together. Ryan now works for Orange County Water. He's an engineer. He's gone through construction. Steve, another Watsonville transfer, born and raised, and he is a civil engineer with the County of Sacramento. So we all kind of went our own ways once we got out of there, but it was definitely a wonderful experience for us. I did 2 internships while I was with University of the Pacific. That's part of their program. Straight out of high school, it's a 5-year program, 4 years of education, 1 year of internships. So you graduate with a resume in your field. Fantastic opportunity. But so I started with Mobil Oil down in Torrance, just outside of LA. That was in 1996. I worked in their remediation engineering department. And what we did was we basically went around and checked up on gas tanks that were leaking. So gas stations would install their tanks, something would happen, a leak would occur, and Mobil Oil was responsible for the spill. So we had a lot of environmental engineering that we were doing at the time. Some pretty interesting methods of cleaning up groundwater and that sort of thing. I have a really fun story about an additive that was part of the gasoline program to make cleaner fuels and how badly it failed. So that was pretty interesting. Getting to do a lot of research on that. I did an internship with Granite Construction in Stockton, so that I was able to continue to take some classes at University of the Pacific and get my internship at the same time. There I did analysis of plans, quantity analysis, takeoffs, how much earthwork do we need to move, how much underground do we have to install. Um, and I helped turn in bids, and that can be pretty nerve-wracking. I mean, you are the lowest person on the company totem pole, and you are responsible for making sure that this proposal gets turned in on time, correctly, completely filled in. And it can be worth millions of dollars. And the company has said, here you go, handle it. Like, oh my God. So it can be pretty interesting. Then I switched over to Tykert Construction. So fun little piece of trivia. You see there that Granite, 100 years old, established in 1922. Tykert was founded in 1887, and between the two of them, they're the oldest active contractors licenses in the state of California. So if
Wow.
you're familiar with construction, you know that the contractors licenses are now 6 digits, 6 or 7 digits, I think. Tykert's contractor's license is 8, Granite's is 89. And the next contractor is, I believe, Swinnerton, or no, hence, I don't remember actually. Never mind. I'll just say I don't remember. They are number 92. So there's some really old companies in California. It's kind of impressive. Um, while I was with Tykert, I was there for 11 years. I worked on a project called Elk Grove Promenade. While I was on that job, we issued $2 million worth of change orders, revisions that we had to reprice, and we wanted to make sure that we made some money on that. So we ended up making about 30% on those $2 million worth of change orders. Again, that was almost 20 years ago. So, that was still a healthy chunk of change. One of my jobs was the SMUD headquarters, and that's what this picture shows. SMUD is Sacramento Municipal Utility District. It's basically a little local PG&E. And we had a 70-acre site. It was formerly mined. You can kind of see up here in the corner that was mined out materials. There's a rock plant there, a construction plant. And there were some really interesting design elements. They were looking to reduce their environmental impact. So they were looking at ways to help cool the buildings and keep things, use this, excuse me, use the environment to do that. So what they did was they put 30-foot deep manholes, construction holes, in the ground underneath some of their buildings, and used that to help circulate the cold air. So that was a pretty inventive way of going about it. That was a really fun job, more of a design build. So as a contractor, we got to work hand in hand with the engineers to come up with the best design and the best proposal. Right. So when I started at Granite, one of my jobs, I was the project manager for a Verizon data center. This was very interesting. It was not as cut and dry as it might seem, and those are some pretty interesting solar panels. A whole lot of mechanical. So if you're looking at being a mechanical engineer or an electrical engineer, this would have been an absolutely fascinating job. As a civil, nightmare. It had so many challenges on it. You know, trouble with the design. We had all the contractors stacked on top of each other. So once the building started to go in, you can see it's not a very big footprint. And I work for construction companies that like big toys. So it was really difficult for us to get in and move around. So that became a lot of negotiations that we had to have with the owners. So that was, God, I hated it, but it was people skills. Those soft skills that you don't really think about. I can do the math, I can do the analysis. You mean I got to be nice to people? This is not what I signed up for. Um, but it's kind of nice because I don't have to do that anymore. I'm not out in the field. The other thing that came up when I started back at Granite was the relationships in the office. When I was all the time I spent with Tykert, we were a very tight-knit bunch. So when I went to Granite, it was kind of looking for that fit again. Is this the right place? In the office, we started doing chili cook-offs. We started doing Friday barbecues. I mean, they would basically give me a day off to plan, prep, and bring the teams in, estimators, project managers, administrative staff, managers, get everybody together and have lunch. They bought a new barbecue because I was there and told them that we needed to be doing these kinds of things. So it was the team building that really kind of drove it home and made it such a welcoming environment. So that was, sorry, that was really fun. Now, I turned my experience as an estimator and project manager and my love of software, I could say, into a kind of specialist role. I now support and provide guidance, help develop processes. So, not officially a process engineer. I'm not allowed to use the term engineer anymore because I'm in construction. But now I support the Monterey Bay, San Francisco Bay Area, and North Coast of California and all of their field operations, estimating software, field management software, document management. How do we give engineers and project managers the tools they need to do their job? How do I teach you to use the software more efficiently and more effectively? So that's what I found I really, really like. So if we circle all the way back to, I'm not going to make the money I want as a math teacher, now I'm basically doing that with adults. And when Joanne reached out and said, hey, I'm looking for somebody, she sent a mass email, anybody know somebody who wants to teach surveying? I went, let's give it a shot. Sorry. So I applied, and lo and behold, that's how I ended up teaching. So I found that I really did like the construction side of things. I will be completely honest. And like I said, sometimes that gets me in trouble. Um, the concept of design and the responsibility and the liability of it was a deterrent to me. The soils engineer that I worked for, Loma Prieta quake hit, downtown Santa Cruz fell, a lot of stuff collapsed. Highway 680, the Bay Bridge, there was so much damage all over the place. And engineers were getting sued left, right, and center. You didn't tell me my building could fall down in a 7.0 earthquake. Well, duh, I mean, but you can't really say that. So there were a lot of lawsuits going around at the time, and being kind of on the periphery of that, that was a little bit of a deterrent for me working at the soils engineer and seeing that firsthand. I also saw him making bank doing expert witness testimony. So he would go read somebody else's report, do his own evaluations, and then, become an expert witness. That was way too much stress for me. Don't put me on the stand. I don't want to be in that position. Um, it just wasn't for me. Um, my degree in engineering, uh, kind of funny, but it's the respect, the change that you get in people. You see it in them. You can watch them physically change when you say you have a degree in engineering. I'm not using, the official documentation. I don't have my license. I'm not a registered engineer. But when you tell people that you've gone through that process, it's like saying you've done the triathlon. It's like saying you competed in the Olympics. There is that instant recognition of, oh, this person has their stuff together, right? So that's made a big difference. I always say I have a degree in engineering. I don't say I'm an engineer, and I try and downplay that as much as possible. But they really do go from, oh, this idiot doesn't know anything to, oh my God, I'm in the presence of a genius. Um, okay, that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but still. Um, and I got to say that while I'm not using my degree to the extent of a design engineer of caliber, I have to say I'm really shallow. I like the paychecks. I like the money, toys, adventures, and I have, I don't have kids. I have two little dogs, and they're really high maintenance. So, I got to keep them in the lavish lifestyle to which they have become accustomed. The specialty food and that sort of thing. So, I think, like I said, a little honest, but not always a good thing. Um,
So,
Opportunities. Yeah.
oh, well, I was going to say, Sarah, we have just a few minutes left.
Okay.
Did you want to take some questions?
Yeah, let's do that.
Um, so there's a few in the chat. Would you say your preferred work as a project, would you say you prefer work as a project manager to working in the field? What were the best and worst parts of management?
The best parts of management are that I have a picture of something that I spent a lot of time and effort in that came out as a successful project. We made money, nobody got hurt, everybody went home at the end of the day. Um, so the tangibility of it is kind of nice. Driving by an overpass and driving by a structure is really fascinating, and you start to look at those and kind of take those apart and how would you have done it? And oh my gosh, what are these idiots doing when they've got this lane closed off for 6 months at a time? And granted, is the one working on Highway 1, so let's play nice. Um, Sorry if it's interrupting anybody's travels. Um, the worst part is arguing about resources, the
Mhm.
money, the access, and just the contentiousness.
Mhm.
Nobody wants to pay their bills for something that they didn't cause for the problem, but they can't pass it on to the owner. So it's a lot of back and forth, and I hated that part. I didn't like the haggling. So um,
Um, so there's another question here. Do civil engineers use a lot of math, like imaginary numbers?
um
Uh,
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we so civil engineers, absolutely. Design calculations, how much water flow, how big a pipe do I need? That's all mathematically based. Um, Contractors, same thing. How am I going to move 11,000 yards of dirt a day? What kind of production rate can I get from this piece of equipment, from this excavator? If I use an excavator and trucks, like that first slide showed, or if I use a different piece of equipment or several pieces of equipment, what's the analysis there? What is my cost per hour? What's my benefit? So, yeah, there is engineering is math.
Yeah, okay. This is a really good question. What are your thoughts on working for a bigger company like Granite versus a smaller company? What made you choose Tykert and Granite over others?
So, I got to say, I've come to really appreciate the larger companies. I did work for a much smaller company where the owner of the business, and this was a contractor as well, was just down the hall from me. And there is so much more micromanagement in a situation like that. They are so much more heavily invested that they need to know every last little detail, and it can feel overwhelming. It can feel like too much pressure on you, and just let me do my thing, and you have to prove yourself there. So the other thing is, with a big company like Tykert or Granite versus a much smaller type of business, you have a legal department that understands the contracts. I don't have to be an expert in legalese, in contract language. I need to know what I'm looking at, but I have a department that's able to review that for me. Labor relations, what are we paying our people? How do we negotiate the union contracts? Risk management, who handles the insurances? Somebody handles the equipment. Here, we've got these pieces of equipment. This is what it's going to cost you to rent them from our own company on your job for this year. So I like having those departments because it's a safety net for me.
Yeah, I mean, in a big company, you can do the job that you were hired to do. A lot of
Hmm.
times in small companies, you have to wear many different hats. That's
Yeah.
one of the things. And you may not be the expert in that role all the time.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to let you go,
Okay.
but somebody asked if you had developed this software. Quick
No.
answer. No. So
No.
no. Okay, you're just the person that teaches it. You provide it as a consultant. You didn't make it yourself. Yes.
No, that's correct. That's correct.
And
So,
then there's this other question I think I'm going to give the time to. Women are fairly rare in engineering and rarer in construction. What was your experience as graduating women entered such a male-dominated job market?
oh, um, I was terrified to go out in the field. I was intimidated by the foremen who had been out there and they were rough and grizzled and scary. And I didn't know anything. And admitting that and realizing that and utilizing their knowledge changed things around tremendously. They became a valued resource. They had been there, done that. So they had some answers. I had the technology to put it together. I could go and get the information from them. How would we build this? What would you do if this were your job? Just because
Mhm.
they don't have the degree doesn't mean they don't have the knowledge. So that was a very valuable lesson for me and being able to work collaboratively. Also being able to swear better than they did. You know, I could outguy them in a lot of ways as I became more comfortable in my role, in my skin, and in my jobs. Um, and that's why to this day, at Granite, they give me the tough customers. We had one chief estimator who would, you took away our tool and you gave us this piece of crap software, blah, 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 blah. And I would go toe to toe with him and explain, very nicely with a smile, but right up with him, this is what it does. You want it to do this? This is how you do that. Oh, well, I didn't know it could do that. And by the end of our conversations, he was offering me a job in his office.
Wow.
So, you know, it's the self-esteem takes a long time to come, but once you get it, oh my God, it's powerful. Um,
Great.
so
Thank you so much. I know some
you're
of these
welcome.
students may want to take surveying at 1A. I don't think there's any prereqs, right?
I think there are just a couple math prereqs,
Okay.
trig, geometry. It does get pretty math intensive.
Okay. Well, hopefully you'll see some of our students from the semester next
Okay,
fall.
great.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for sharing your experience and being with us today.
You're very welcome. Good luck, everybody.